Сега идва ред за още един наш международен гост, който ни чака онлайн. Мисля, че всеки един от вас имаше възможност поне да се заинтересува от заглавието. Аз имах удоволствието да прочета тази книга, може би един от първите, за да имам възможност. Ако не сте я видели, разгледайте я и по-нататъка през деня. Но сега ще имаме възможността да чуем и нейния автор. За мен темата за зеления преход и въобще за случването, професионалното случване, устойчивото на нашия преход или на прехода във всяка икономика, винаги опира до човека специалист. Специалиста по устойчивост, знаете, е така една много рядка птица. Чухме го и от колегите, които работят и търсят таланти в тази област. Той е генералист, от друга страна пък трябва да е тесен специалист в индустрията, пък да разбира едновременно от всичките тези теми. И за мен беше голямо предизвикателство наистина да видя как тази професия се променя в годините, какъв е профила на този човек. Бих искала да ви запозная с една много кратка статистика, за да видите пък кой е той в България, защото направихме в началото на тази година национално проучване, за да видим как се променя профила на специалистите по устойчивост или ESG специалистите. И това, което виждаме е, че 45% са на директорска или висока мениджърска позиция и 78% от тях са жени. Считам, че и двете са много важни като характеристики на първо място, за да видим как темата се повдига в дневния ред на всяка една компания и в нейното управление и как обикновено, когато имаме мъже на ръководните позиции, жената винаги дава възможност първо за разнообразие и второ, за да може да се обгледат всичките гледни точки при планирането и изпълнението след това на едни такива големи ESG стратегии, за които ще говорим и сега. Нещо, което можете да наблюдавате и в компаниите, за които ще обсъдим опита на техните така наречени Chief Sustainability Officers или ръководители на основните големи направления в областта на устойчивостта. Много са индустриите, 24 са компаниите. Не зная дали пак трябва да представя госпожа Криса Пагицас. Всеки един от вас е прочел нейната кратка автобиография. Онова, което за мен беше най-важното в предварителните ни разговори с нея е да видя страстта, с която тя наистина е първопроходник и бидейки такава се умяла да избере така най-правилните свои, ако бих могла да кажа, интервюирани, за да видиме преход, който компаниите в международно ниво, не само от Европа, а в целия свят, вървят повече от 10-15 години. Така че нека да бъдем и малко по-толерантни, малко по-разбиращи за нас самите. Ние сме в началото на път, в който вече имаме хора, които са минали, имаме компании, от които да се учим и сме доста по-уверени, че вървим на прав път. Нека да дадем думата на Криса Пагицас, наш гост-лектор от Щатите. Hello, nice to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marina. It's a pleasure to be here today. Благодаря, Marina. I appreciate being here and being able to speak with you virtually from Washington, D.C. When I think about the work that you're doing today, the theme of the conference is absolutely perfect. Transformation in action is absolutely what we, not only in Bulgaria, not only in Europe, but the world need to be tackling when it comes to sustainability and environmental social governance. Marina was kind enough to introduce me as the author of Chief Sustainability Officers at Work, and I welcome the opportunity to hear about your questions about the book and what inspired you when you read these 25 stories. Today, I'd like to talk about the how of sustainability. We heard from Pilar, we've heard from other speakers about the big picture that's happening around green bonds, around the work that is happening in the EU. But today I want to ground us to the details of how do we do it? How do we do it as business leaders? How do we do it within our organizations and businesses and within Bulgaria? And how can we learn from others who have gone before, who have tackled these spaces and have succeeded? So today in my conversation, I'd like to walk you through three parts. First, I'd love to talk to you about my own story, how I went from working in the utilities industry to creating the world's largest issuer of green bonds. I'd next like to tell you about the stories of other sustainability leaders, such as Procter & Gamble and Anheuser-Busch. I'm sure you're familiar with those products. And those products are also listed in my book. And then last, I want to leave you with some tangible examples of How can you lead in your own business with sustainability and ESG today, not in 2025, in 2020, in 2030, or even 2040, but today? So it's a question grounded in how, or conversation grounded in how. But I do want to take one moment to pause on another important question, another important word, which is why. Why are we addressing climate change? Why are we trying to address carbon? Why are we trying to even tackle social issues and try to increase food security? And why are we trying to increase access to education for all people, regardless of their country and socioeconomic status? The simple answer is, it is the right thing to do, but the more complex answer is that it's better for everybody if we focus on these issues. Together, we can create a better society, create a better planet, while also succeeding individually and collectively. There are many, many experts out there who talk about the why of climate change, the science behind it, the socioeconomic factors that make it important. But I believe you already know the answers to the why, which is why you're here in this conference, why you're engaging in this conversation, and why I think you're going to leave today with some action items so that transformation and action really will become real. So let me start with the first part of that, how. How did I end up in this sustainability space? How did I start thinking about this world? And I will tell you the truth is completely by accident. Was not at all planned. I started my career in 2000 working in the utilities industry. That's right, traditional utilities, energy industry, thinking about transmission and distribution. Fundamentally, I was an energy forecaster. I was working with companies to forecast what the price of energy would be based on historical consumption, and then making sure that the IT systems worked. And I loved it. But in the year 2000, when I started my career, there were significant milestones in the space of sustainability. Worldwide solar photovoltaic installations surpassed 1 gigawatt. That meant renewable energy was starting to go commercial. 1 gigawatt can power over 700,000 homes. And for context, today there's over 900 gigawatts of solar production globally. In 2000 as well, the first LEED buildings were certified, the first one in the US and the second one in Sri Lanka. For those not familiar with the real estate space and LEED, it is the leadership in energy and environmental design, the leading green building certification that tells a real estate owner and its residents and its tenants that, yes, this building is energy efficient. It's using less energy and water than a peer building, and therefore better for everyone. It was these innovations and many others now over 23 years ago that were disrupting my work. And because the disruption that was occurring was less energy was being used. The energy models needed to change. My client, the utility companies, needed to change what their price forecasts were. And it opened my eyes to this disruption as an opportunity that green buildings create better worlds, create better experiences for the people that live and work and study in them. So my career shifted. I left the energy space in the traditional sense, left IT consulting, and moved into renewable energy and efficiency and sustainability. And over the next 10 years, I worked with large real estate companies to change their asset management strategies to reduce energy consumption. I visited the Philippines to explore how energy could be made from agricultural waste. I thought about how thorn bush in Africa could also be used to create new energy sources that were cleaner for the people living in Namibia. But I think fundamentally, after a decade there of helping others build businesses, I was ready to build a business of my own, granted within a large company. So in 2010, I came to Fannie Mae. I was hired to be frank to start a green thing, a green initiative. There really was no deeper description than that. One person was able to fund one hiring position, and I got the job based on my deep experience over the last 10 years doing similar work. For those not familiar with Fannie Mae, it's a unique institution, but essentially it's a lender in the United States that supports the housing market. single-family homes, and apartment buildings where people rent. Underlying these loans is the ability that Fannie Mae has to take the loans and package them and create mortgage-backed securities, or MBS. Bonds in the market trade globally. And indeed, I had the pleasure over the years of meeting with many European investors who were not only interested in Fannie Mae's bonds, but the green bonds that I ended up building with my team. The key thing that I want to emphasize here is that when I came to Fannie Mae, indeed, I was there to start a green initiative, a green business. But I want to tell you there was no roadmap. There was absolutely no strategic plan in place. There was no top-down mandate, and there was no regulatory mandate. It was an idea, and it was an idea based on the fact that I knew that the market wanted it, could use it, but it hadn't been done before. And as we think about the opportunities in Bulgaria, it might be that there is an idea that you have to bring in green opportunities, reduce natural resources being used, increase the social impact, but there may not be a regulatory structure yet within Bulgaria, separate from the EU, that actually will drive it. But that's okay, because we're going to talk about how to make that happen. What I want to tell you is that the work that I did at Fannie Mae was to take this product, because our product was loans, and specifically mortgage loans to buy apartment buildings, and think through all the details that it took to get an owner of an apartment building to say yes to this type of mortgage so that it could become a green bond. And there were many yeses that needed to happen, but there's two that I want to focus on today, because those two techniques, piloting and partnering, is what created a business that became $51 billion through 2018 and then doubled again by the year end of 2022. Now Fannie Mae has issued over $110 billion in green bonds, all backed by mortgages that are backed by greener properties that have reduced their energy and water impact, and also have cost savings for the owners and the families that live there. This is the core of the how that I promised to tell you at the beginning. How? Well, how is piloting and partnering? I think we're all familiar with that term, pilot. Pilot is to test, it's to try, it's to experiment. It's to figure out how a process can create something new. But sometimes you don't know the answer to it. There might not be a roadmap. The thing about pilots is that they don't need to be expensive. And in fact, they may need to happen multiple times. And especially when there is no roadmap, you might need to fail as well. I want to tell you about two pilots that I ran with my team to create mortgage products. But before I do that, there is a point that I want to make, which is I'm not trying to convince you to change your business to become a green mortgage lender. In fact, I know many of you, yes, are in financial services, but you're in telecommunications, you're in agriculture, you're in IT, you're in other types of industries. So I hope you take from this story not so much how to create a green loan, but how to approach creating a green business, how to create opportunity when you're thinking about energy and water and natural resources, as well as society. So I mentioned two pilots. One was with an entity, a federal agency in the United States, and one was with a nonprofit. And with both of these organizations, we created two green mortgage products that we tried to sell to the market. We wanted owners of buildings to say yes, so we could get them to make improvements in their properties so they'd be greener, the air would be cleaner, bills would be lower, and people would be healthier. The catch is we needed to figure out what the levers were to get them to say yes. With the federal entity, yes, we were able to get loans to come in the door. We did a $5 million loan, a $19 million loan. In total, we did $90 million, all supporting affordable housing in the United States and making those properties greener. On the other side, with the nonprofit, guess how many we did? Just think of a number in your head. We only did one. Only one loan. for $800,000. That's a big difference. Now, we could argue that that was not a successful pilot, but in fact, we learned a lot. We learned a lot about partnering with those entities, what the levers were for success, but more importantly, we learned that we needed a particular type of partner. It turns out that that second keyword that I mentioned, which is partners, is so important because you need unconventional partners sometimes. It turns out that the absolute best salesmen and women in the market for our green loans was actually energy auditors, energy engineers, the men and women that walk the property and make a list of all the improvements that need to happen at the property. Those were the people who were most incentivized to tell borrowers, the owners of the buildings, why a green loan was important, why they should say yes, because the energy auditors and energy engineers got new business. We created a mutually reinforcing system where the energy auditors got to do their reports and we got to have green loans, and then the properties got to be improved. I share these two lessons because they were so meaningful over the decade that I led at Fannie Mae. And it was in my role, first as the head of the green business for 8 years, and then the head of ESG for 2.5 years, that I learned a lot of tough lessons. Lessons about piloting, lessons about partnership, lessons about how do you convince internal peers, how do you actually make this work, especially in a company highly regulated that is working to serve thousands of people, if not millions of people across the United States. After over a decade, I had some questions. I told you some of my lessons about my personal journey, but I reflected in this second decade of my career to say, could I have done it better? Was my experience unique? How did others launch new pilots or partner to create sustainability strategies? And that's ultimately what led to the book, Chief Sustainability Officers at Work. I was able to interview peers and chief sustainability officers and heads of ESG at companies from Amazon to BlackRock to IKEA and Netflix, companies that had a long-standing sustainability commitment. They weren't new to this space. They had been working at it for a number of years. And I knew that they were trying to move millions and billions of dollars and create impact for companies and countries across the globe. They were big, they were committed, public view, and I knew that there were things to be learned. And as I interviewed these chief sustainability officers, I found good news. My experience wasn't unique. That can be a bit of a relief, right? You're not alone. You weren't doing it wrong the whole way. So I want to tell you the story about two major companies, Anheuser-Busch and Procter & Gamble. They both used pilots and partnerships as they were setting their ambitious sustainability and ESG goals. I'm going to start with telling you about Ezgi Barcenas, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer of Anheuser-Busch. A brilliant woman. She's been at Anheuser-Busch now close to a decade. She started in procurement, but she was always involved in sustainability and rose through the ranks and then was appointed CSO about 1.5 years ago. Ezgi knew by working very closely with suppliers globally how important it is to connect with the suppliers because they have answers. They have answers that she and her team, perhaps in headquarters, don't have. Ezgi Barcenas also knew that her CEO was expecting her to present ambitious sustainability goals to drive shareholder value, mitigate risk, and drive new revenue opportunities. So Ezgi did that. She took 2 goals plus a few more to the C-suite, to the CEO to ask for approval to put out goals around achieving net zero across the value chain by 2040 and providing 100% of communities in high-stress areas with measurably improved water availability quality by 2025. In that meeting, the CEO asked Ezgi, can we get there today? Do we have the technology? Are you sure that we're going to get there? Her answer was no. We don't have the solutions. We don't have the technologies. These are ambitious goals, and we can't get there today. But what they did in that meeting was not only approve those goals, but they decided to invest and create an accelerator, an incubator, a place where they would bring together companies that were committed to figuring out these answers, figuring out the technologies, and building them for them so that as they set these ambitious goals, the technologies would be there in order to create them. That program is called Accelerator 100, and they're on their 5th cohort today. They brought together over 160 companies in 30 countries to develop these new technologies. That is an exceedingly excellent example of both piloting as well as partnering, piloting new technologies and partnering with new firms in order to get to the solution. Virginie Elias, another incredible leader. Virginie Elias actually came from marketing. I am sure we're all familiar with Ariel. I'm sure we're all familiar with the campaign of Turn to 30. The Ariel campaign was actually started by Virginie before she was involved in sustainability, but because that product actually works better in cold water, it turned out to have a product benefit, a consumer benefit, and a sustainability benefit. Now, Virginie was not a sustainability leader. She was a marketer and she was proud of it, but she became very passionate about sustainability and eventually became the Chief Sustainability Officer. Procter & Gamble is a global business. We're all familiar with their products. We probably used even some of them today before coming to the conference. 2 of Procter & Gamble's ambitious goals are 1, to design all consumer packaging to be recyclable or reusable by 2030, and 2, achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions across its operations and supply chain. Another set of ambitious goals that Procter & Gamble can't do it alone. What's interesting about Virginie is that she started internally. She knew that to make bottles recyclable, she needed to make sure that the flagship product for Procter & Gamble represented those ideas. She had to make sure that Head & Shoulders, the shampoo, I'm sure we're all familiar with that blue and white bottle, represented that strategy of commitment to recycling, of recycling plastic. So what she did is she reached out to her internal colleague, Lisa Jennings, and said, look, there is a better way to do this, and it will support the brand. Together, what they did is they figured out how to use bottles picked up from the beaches of France and others by volunteers, could be recreated into a gray bottle so that it would respond to the goal that they have set and get consumer attention. They again achieved what I think we all would like to do with our businesses, which is achieve a better product, achieve a better outcome for the planet, and yes, have an opportunity for revenue. The point with these stories around these 2 companies, Procter & Gamble and Anheuser-Busch, is that they too depended on pilots and partnerships. And this is what brings me to the third part of our conversation today, is how does it work within the Bulgarian context? As I started out in the beginning, I want to emphasize that we're no longer asking and trying to answer the questions of why we need to do this. This is really about now and acting and how to act. I've been working in this space over 20 years, and first as a practitioner working for Fannie Mae and then advising clients, and I now advise clients again on how to achieve these ambitious goals. And I'm going to distill for you some of the key lessons about the how transformation and action will happen, how you can do it today in Bulgaria, even when there isn't a regulatory framework that is requiring it necessarily, or there might not be immediate pressure to do it today. So where do you start? There are 5 places. 1, you do need to appoint a leader who will begin to put the sustainability and ESG strategy together. That doesn't have to be their full-time job, but you need someone who is going to be thinking about the interconnection of sustainability and ESG with your business, who's going to be thinking about opportunities that connect to investors, who's going to be thinking about how you're going to communicate it to consumers, perhaps in a different way than you have before, and thinking about where you can engage with either suppliers that depend upon you or how you can position yourself as a better supplier to your customers. One of the things about my book that was very intentional was that I picked leaders not only that worked at established companies with a long track record of sustainability, but leaders who had diverse backgrounds. I mentioned that Ezgi Barcenas was in procurement, that Virginie Elias was in marketing. Jim Gowan at Verizon came from supply chains. There are many, many backgrounds that you can have that position you well to be a sustainability leader. What you need to have, if you don't have a technical background in environmental and social impact, is a passion to learn and connect business strategy with sustainability strategy. While in Bulgaria, the Chief Sustainability Officer may not yet be recognized in the Bulgarian National Classification of Professions and Positions, you can create the role today, you can put shape to it, and it can begin to drive impact at your company. Second, after appointing that leader is going to be thinking about with you what the material issues are for your company. I mentioned that Anheuser-Busch had set a water goal. Well, no water, no beer. It's going to be an important material issue for Anheuser-Busch. Procter & Gamble set a goal around plastics. Same thing. They need a way to contain the shampoo. We need a better way than the old plastics way they've been using. The material issues are going to be different for every business. In the financial services business, for my work, it was about housing. How do we create better homes through loans? Telecoms, it might be actually your energy, data centers. How do you reduce the energy footprint? I'm listing these as examples to start thinking about your business. What are your material issues? And what are the things that are going to be important for you to prioritize and to start creating goals around? The third one is something that I am very focused on because I do believe it has a lot of opportunities. Given the interconnected nature of global business, given where Bulgaria is in the EU and where it's positioned globally, your companies are well positioned to connect to multinationals and be the drivers of innovation around sustainability, around product manufacturing, around net zero goals. So the third recommendation that I have for you is learn what other multinationals are doing that operate in Bulgaria. Trace your business's material issues to them and engage with them to see how your business can help them achieve their sustainability goals. Now, I mentioned Anheuser-Busch and the Accelerator 100. I do know also that Heineken operates in Bulgaria. They've got the Zagorka brand, Ariana, Solichno. They too have set an ambition to operate a net zero value chain by 2040. For those of you that are working in water analysis or thinking in manufacturing, is there a way that a company like Heineken could benefit from the work that you already know today to achieve their goal? And I believe that there is capital here that can be deployed to support your transformation. The Anheuser-Busch initiative awards up to $100,000 per company to help in meeting Anheuser-Busch goals. They're not the only ones making investments in suppliers and aren't the only ones looking for innovation and new idea. So look to the multinationals and see where they are operating and where they could benefit from your ideas. And not surprisingly, pilot. Piloting does not have to be capital intensive. In fact, if you think about it, the only investment Fannie Mae made in the green financing business was me, one person at the very beginning in 2010. We didn't put up any money in order to create the two pilots with those two entities that I mentioned. Piloting can be changing a process. It can be spending time changing a contract or a form or a policy. But these small actions can change the way your company operates in a sustainable fashion. And then last but not least is the partnership piece. Find partners. Partners can be unconventional. They can be competitors. They can be industry associations. And yes, they can even be internal and regulatory partners. All of these entities have something to offer you and can help propel your business to a new height while integrating sustainability. So on that note, I would like to summarize that a leader in sustainability is critical to help you drive your strategy forward, understand what your material issues are, learn what multinationals are doing that operate in Bulgaria, and connect your work to their sustainability goals. And above all, pilot, because it's through piloting and creating strong partnerships that you'll really drive your business forward in this new economy. So in conclusion, thank you again. It's truly a pleasure to be with you here today and inviting me to speak. I'd like to open up for Q&A, Marina, and hear from the audience. Thank you again.
So probably you heard the audience and their applauses. I would like to join. It was really like reading with you, not only the book, but also your presentation for who you are, because it is really exciting journey that each of us in this room, and not only here, but in all the positions of large companies in Bulgaria and following by the SMEs, will get to go, by himself or herself. And it is really inspiring to see that you are not alone and somebody is already not only paving the road ahead, but also helping you, turning back and sharing experience. Of course, you are all invited to give your questions. It is a very nice place, and I think we have a profound consultant and expert in the field of sustainability. Before people are thinking, I already have at least two, so I will start, and I encourage you, everybody, just to raise your hand just to go for the discussion. You were speaking many things, and I really would like to go back to people. Because people are the ones who are driving the change. Okay, so we live in the context, it is challenging, then we go to strategies, products, operations, everything. We can do it by the book, but then it is still the person or the actor who is driving this change are the people. And speaking on so many companies who are international companies, 25, so many branches coming from telecoms to finance, then to entertainment, retail. Everybody who you covered is working on a, international level of changing their multinational corporations. What about going into the local one, to the local context? Because every country, every geography has a specific, and this specific culture should be found a way to be overcome. Not everybody has the entrepreneurial spirit, for example, as the American business has, and as the strength. Some of us are living in post-communist countries where we have a little bit harder approach to innovation or to disruption. So this is one of the questions: how you deal with and how they dealt with these cultural differences of implementing their very bold solutions, all around the markets.
Marina, it's a great question, because at the end of the day, it's not the machine that does something. It's not the technology that does something. It's people, and people decide, yes, I'm going to support this, or no, I'm not. And I will tell you, when I joined Fannie Mae, there were not a lot of yeses. There were a lot of no's. No, we don't need a green mortgage. No, you can't change this policy. No, you can't change this process. So perhaps not post-communist in a way, but perhaps a culture at my organization that was not lending itself to innovation, at least not innovation in the green space. So my answer, Marina, is that in order to get to the yeses that we need, in order to start thinking differently, we actually need to think about people as individuals and really map, break down, understand motivators. Regional context matters. So something that may work in Italy will not work in Bulgaria. And if it works in Bulgaria, it may not work in Turkey. It may not work in Greece. I know this. I'm sure you can tell from my name, I'm Greek. I'm very close to my family in Greece. And we are all individual countries with individual drivers, cultural as well as political and business. So my answer, Marina, is that when somebody is trying to make a change around sustainability, you need to think about what is the individual motivator. Is it going to be what their customer wants? Is it going to be what their regulator wants? Is it going to be something that drives them personally and is a personal passion project? It's only when we get to those individual answers can we then get to the yeses that we need and change the way that businesses operate.
So thank you very much. A question from the audience? I have a list of questions, you know. Not for now. Okay, I continue then. So my next question would be, for sure, it sounds from your mouth and from people who understand this ESG topic very easy, you know, to handle. But you know things about materiality, you know other things like ESG, stakeholder engagement, identification, so many things that people are confused to see. And again, you have, I read in the book, companies like Amazon are having almost 40 external auditors partnering all over the world. So they apply various standards, and it's getting really complicated. So how we can manage, you know, with this, it is not a sea, it's an ocean, like the plastic ocean, with over 400 labels for green and environmental friendly and sustainable, and then we go to the standards, and then we go to the normative requirements, how to start this, you know, handle this issue.
Marina, I completely agree. If anything, I hate to say this, but I think there are too many standards. I think it is too confusing right now and too overwhelming oftentimes for those that are just starting. Because at the end of the day, everyone needs to start, and we need to figure out a place to start. So my answer is, if you're looking at regulations, not regulations, I should say, if you're looking at standards, I would just pick one, and I would pick the one that is most applicable to your business and your material issues. What I mean by that is that there are many rating agencies. I know, Marina, you're familiar, from MSCI, there's S&P, there's CDP, there's SASB, there's TCFD. There's quite a long list of voluntary reporting frameworks, but they're not all the same. Some of them are better suited to different business lines. So at the end of the day, if you're trying to start, pick one and learn from the data collection process. Learn what metrics you have around environmental and social issues. Learn in order to decide, yes, this is going to be my strategy. I don't think that we're able as companies, particularly when we're thinking about regional country level, we do not have the resources to spend hire 40 auditors and hire 100 consultants. It's unreasonable. It's not profitable. It's not the way to go. We need to start with one, understand it deeply, and then move forward. That's the best way to move forward.
Thank you for this encouraging, you know. One is much easier to handle than 41.
One. Start with one. Yeah, start with one.
Marina, if I may, question from the audience. Hi. First, to thank you for the lecture. It was very interesting to hear, especially in my day job. I am a sustainability manager, so it was good to hear the experience of others. You mentioned finding partners and to look for them internally in industry associations, but also competitors. I would like to know how this works, because maybe it's our local context, maybe I'm just curious, but how do you reach out to competitors and look for opportunities to work together?
It's a great question, and frankly, the idea of reaching out to a competitor can be very uncomfortable. It might seem counterintuitive. It might seem unprofitable. Now, I first want to recognize that there is individual, there's business strategies that you probably will not be sharing. You're not going to be sharing pricing information with your competitor. But why you would reach out to competitor is to solve a common problem. For some companies, you might be sharing the same supplier to produce some product, whether it's a server, whether it's a bottle, whether it's a plastic wrap. If you're setting a sustainability goal and that supplier needs to convert some of their manufacturing equipment and it costs $100,000, that's a large sum of money. Wouldn't it be better if you put in 50,000, your competitor put in 50,000, and then that supplier was able to convert their manufacturing equipment to a more sustainable process? So it's not so much with a competitor in order to create a new business line. Instead, it's to solve an underlying problem. Similarly, when I worked at Fannie Mae, again, I don't work there anymore, but our competitor, sister organization, but really competitor, is an entity called Freddie Mac. We both had a vested interest in explaining to our regulator, the Federal Housing Finance Agency, FHFA, why green bonds made sense, why they were not an additional risk, why they shouldn't be worried about the data that we were reporting to investors. So in that case, we worked together, not without violating any antitrust regulations, to communicate to the regulator the benefits of green bonds so that both of our securities were accepted and introduced into the global market. So those are two examples of how working with a competitor can benefit your company.
Thank you.
Дали има още въпроси? Може би тук? Добре. Докато вие мислите, нека още един да задам. So while they are thinking, I'm going to the next one. And the next one is really focused for me for another quite provoking thing. We were speaking about here in the hall before you about how and whether customers are ready to support us. You told us that to some of the projects, yes, they are more than willing, but to some other decisions, they really not that prepared. And I was looking at the example of Netflix and how they approach these complicated, very, very complicated topics. So do you have any advices for our companies here in the room? What should be their approach, to dealing with so complicated issues and delivering this interrelated information to the customers so they can empower their decision making, they can engage them and bring their enthusiasm to support the changes which are necessary for the transition?
Marina, that's a wonderful question. And what I would love to do is ask the audience to imagine an amphitheater. Not just a traditional stage where we look forward, but an amphitheater that completely surrounds us and where the actors are in the center of the stage and are talking to every section of that amphitheater. When you, as a business, whether you're the sustainability manager or the CEO, you want to be speaking to all of your consumers sitting in the different seats because they have different perspectives. They're hearing different things. Emma Stewart, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer at Netflix, is absolutely brilliant in thinking about this. Because Netflix, you might think, what are they doing around sustainability? Well, first, they're actually communicating the importance of sustainability through different shows. There's a movie out there that came a couple years ago called Don't Look Up with Leonardo DiCaprio. Has everyone watched it? Some of you maybe. Yep, I see a couple hands, right? That story, for those of you that haven't, was about a meteor hitting Earth, right? But instead, the message was that it's really about climate change that's hitting Earth. And the message was people were being told, don't look up, don't look at the problem. So one thing that Marina, that Netflix is doing and Emma Stewart is doing is she's telling the stories through many different types. Maybe you don't like Leonardo DiCaprio. Maybe you don't like movies. It's coming through kids shows. It's coming through baking shows. It's coming through every type of story that Netflix produces in order to communicate to the consumer in the language, in the format that they want. The other thing that Netflix is doing is that they're making changes to the way that they make movies, the way they make shows. So for example, now the lighting that's used in the shows doesn't melt the actors' makeup. They use LED lighting. Turns out the actors like it when their face doesn't melt and they're not hot under their costumes. They use electric vehicles now to transport the actors from one place to another. And they use electric generators instead of diesel generators on site. That last example is important because oftentimes these shows are recorded and taped in neighborhoods. They'll come to a country, they'll come to a village, they'll come to a city, and at 2 a.m. they'll be recording this show, and the generator makes everybody upset in the neighborhood who's trying to sleep. The electric generators are quiet. So when we come back to that amphitheater, what Netflix is doing is communicating sustainability in ways that the consumer appreciates, whether it's different types of storytelling or in things like electric generators that don't bother them when they come to their country or to their town to record. It's a great example, and that's probably one of my favorite chapters.
Дали има още въпроси? Аз поне не виждам от тази светлина. Да, има един. Да. Another question from the audience.
Thank you. My name is Desislava Beleva, and I'm a lawyer. And since soon I'm a sustainability specialist here in Bulgaria, and I'm very proud to be here and happy to hear that there is someone with such an experience wanting to share with us, because we are in the beginning of our path to sustainability. And my question is that you mentioned that sustainability specialists in America are different kinds, and because here we are in the beginning in our path, I would like to know more about this issue. What kind of specialists there are, what are they doing, and how this profession is regulated in the States? Thank you.
Great question. So in the United States, there is no regulation on the profession of sustainability, interestingly. When I started in 2000, there was really no way to signal that you were a sustainability expert except through your project expertise that you would list on your CV, or perhaps to get some certifications that could signal that. And in the early 2000s, the only one really out there was the LEED certification. This was the one for green buildings from the US Green Building Council. So there's still today, 25 years later, there is no regulations, but there are different types of specialists. There are specialists in social impact. There are specialists in supply chains and human rights issues. There is carbon accounting specialists. And the list goes on, water management and so on. What I would say that for where Bulgaria is, in some ways, the scope doesn't matter. And what I mean by that is you could call yourself a sustainability manager today, and it could be different from the sustainability manager of the person sitting next to you. What's going to be important is to have a specialty to be able to say that you are a specialist in sustainability issues related to supply chains, or a specialist in carbon accounting. Because these specialties are so technical, you will not be able to be an expert in everything. You will need to create a network of your peers, of people that you can call and say, I need help with this, I need help with this, because the field is so technical. I think one last note on this particular question, I am absolutely thrilled to hear that you're a lawyer. And everybody should make sure that they get to know this person in the audience or other people in the legal profession who are interested in sustainability. I will say oftentimes in the United States, lawyers are considered in the back, they just review the contracts, they take forever to make the reviews. What I would actually say is that the lawyers that I work with often become my most powerful allies. It's because lawyers have the ability to change the terms, the clauses, the impacts. They are able to change things that then become something that an organization has to follow for many years, whether it's the policy around their own employees or the policies as it relates to their customers and the policies related to their suppliers. So the legal profession and sustainability is an exciting place to be and an important one for any sustainability professional to be aware of and to partner with.
Thank you so much. So I will take the floor for the last one because we need to close. We couldn't ask you so many things till tomorrow probably, but the last question for me would be for the future. So you are 15 years ahead, probably, or multinational companies are in the implementation of their strategies and going to the transformation. What should we expect next? What is your challenge now from the place you're looking at the future?
You know, employee mobilization. Whether you work for a company of 5 people, 500 people, or 5,000, everybody needs to care at least a little bit about sustainability. That's because the sustainability manager, the sustainability director, the head of ESG can't do it alone. They're not sitting in the sales meetings. They're not sitting in the legal discussions. They're not sitting in the product development. So instead, we need to mobilize individual employees that sit in each of these important roles and have them understand the part of their work that will contribute to sustainability. That's how we get to a big yes. That's how we actually change the future and create sustainable impact for all companies across the world.
So
employee engagement is the key important thing for the next 2 years.
Thank you so much for being here with us. Може ли още веднъж аплодисменти за нашия гост? Looking forward to see you in person.
I am looking forward to it as well.
Thank you.